Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are on book 2, which is we studied last week incarnation in different worlds, and now we are doing progressive transmigrations. We have stopped on 192. We are going to start today on 193. We are talking about the progress of humankind or progress of spirits in general in the universe. Okay. So Philip, can you do the honors? 193.
Can individuals fall to a lower point than the one they have already reached in new lives? In terms of social position, yes. As a spirit, no.
Yeah, we know that we are always progressing as spirits, as eternal spirits. We talked last week about the moral progress that always is with us throughout the different incarnations. We always bring with us our moral progress. We know not always bring with us our intellectual progress, depending on our necessities on a specific incarnation. So the question here is that Kardec asked if we can come to a lower point, is in terms of our position in society. And of course, the answer is yes, because we need to go through different experiences and experience the challenges of wealthy and poor existences to learn how to divide what we have if we have an abundance of resources, and to resign with what we don't have if we have lack of resources, because these are the only ways that we are going to acquire qualities and improve our moral evolvement. So yes, we'll come from two different positions, but of course, as a spirit, we are always progressing, even when it looks like we are stagnant, like we mentioned the last question of last week. When the spirit is theoretically stagnant, it is at least learning that being stagnant is not helpful for their progress. So if when the spirit looks back at that incarnation and sees that it hasn't achieved anything in the incarnation, the lesson and the progress will be that it was a wasted reincarnation. So they learned that they shouldn't be wasting an incarnation. So that's the progress that they will make in that, have made in that incarnation. Okay. 194.
Can the soul of a good person inhabit the body of a scoundrel when reincarnated? No, because a spirit cannot regress. Can the soul of a wicked person become that of a good one? Yes, if he or she repents, it is a reward. Spirit advancement is always progressive and never regressive. They gradually rise in the spirit hierarchy and never regress from the point at which they have arrived. Throughout their different corporal lives, they may be downgraded as human beings, but not as spirits. Therefore, the soul of a person who has reached the peak of material power may, in a subsequent life, be a modest artisan and vice versa, because positions among individuals are frequently the inverse of the elevation of their morality. Herod was a king, and Jesus was a carpenter.
Yeah, here we need to make sure we separate the spirit with the position or the physical body the spirit inhabits, right? So we know that the spirits are always progressing and never regress. So if you are a good person, if you have a good moral standards, it's not because you are going to be born in a difficult situation or even amongst thieves that you are going to become a thief, because it's not who you are. Again, if you have the tendencies and you come to try to learn to resist the temptation, you may fall into the temptation, because what happened is that you haven't achieved the progress that you needed to achieve. So the same situation, you are born among thieves, and you have to overcome this tendency. You may not be able to overcome and become a thief in that incarnation. If you are a violent person, you may reincarnate in a very weak and fragile body, but you still be violent if you allow your lower impulses to take the best of you. And if on the other way around, if you are a gentle and kind person, spirit, you can be incarnated in a very tall and strong physical body, but you are not never going to use that physical body to abuse others, because it's not who you are. But because the second question Kardec asks the spirit, can the soul of a weak person become of that of a good one? The law is of progress. Can you make a huge advancement from one incarnation to the other? It's difficult, very difficult, but possible. You have the story of Paul of Tarsus in the book Paul and Stephen. You see the big change that he made in this incarnation. It's not that he was never an evil person. He was not an evil spirit, but he was a strong-willed and hardened spirit that had his beliefs and was very inflexible in trying to impose his truths to others in the beginning, when he was Saul and he was the rabbi studying to be a rabbi, and was working in the religious institution there. And he changed completely the moment he met Jesus on the way to Damascus, at the gates of Damascus, and immediately he asks, what do you want me to do? So he never questioned himself, because if you imagine any of us in the same situation, our natural reaction would be to give Jesus a lot of excuses why we've been acting the way we were, right? Like he was. But no, he immediately changed. So it is possible to change. A big change is possible. And we have other examples. We have Francis of Assisi. We have Buddha. We have Gandhi. They all changed radically during their incarnation. So it is possible that you change. But normally, the average of us will change very little, and we will fall back on many of our imperfections, and we will evolve in some of them. Few of them will be able to learn to improve, but generally we will struggle to improve in many of our on our imperfections at this stage of evolution that we are. The more we evolve, the faster we are able to change, because we start collecting the understanding of the result of changes. And as we see the result of changes and the rewards that gives us in terms of where we find ourselves, how we deal mentally with everything that is happening to us, it propels us to move faster. But as we're still struggling and very attached to material things, to the material world, it's very difficult for us to change a lot during one incarnation. We, at our stage of evolvement, we change very little incarnation to incarnation. But again, going back to the social position, as Kardec says, frequently the inverse of the elevation of their morality, because a lot of more evolved spirits will will choose a humbler incarnation to serve as an example and to allow them to work in a more efficient way. Because it's when you are a St. Francis of Assisi that came in a rich family, he chose to leave everything behind. Why? Because he knew that all the material possessions that he had would be hindrance to his work that he was willing to do here on earth. So he left everything behind. He learned that he had to break away with the family in order to pursue his mission. The same happened with Clara of Assisi that followed him. And we see other examples also. Gandhi also was a lawyer and was working as a lawyer, and he left everything behind to follow his mission of liberating the society, the Indian society from the British Empire. Okay. Questions? Oh. Okay. 195.
Could the ability to improve in a future existence result in some people leading immoral lives when they know that they are always able to make amends at some point in time? Such a premise indicates no real belief in anything, and the idea of eternal punishment could not affect such individuals anyway, because their reason would reject it and lead to skepticism in everything. If only reason guided people, there would not be so many skeptics. An imperfect spirit might reason this way during physical life, but once freed from the shackles of the material body, they have a dramatically different way of thinking. They realize that they made a great error, and this causes them to adopt an opposite sense in their next existence. This is how progress is accomplished and why some are more advanced than others. Some people have already had the experiences that others have yet to go through, acquiring them little by little, and each spirit is responsible for their own progress or delaying it indefinitely. Those who hold an inferior position want to change it as soon as possible. In addition, those who know that the trials and tribulations of the present life are the consequences of their own imperfections seek any means possible to ensure a new existence that is less painful. This attitude will much more effectively keep them away from a bad path than the threat of eternal fire, which they do not believe in anyway.
So this is a very interesting question, right? Because, and we see this question asked many times throughout the years that we study here. Because as we are eternal spirits, and the law is of progress, and we will always be moving forward, we will always be progressing. So why should I make any effort now? I have eternity ahead of me. I don't need to make any effort, right? We had this question many times here throughout these studies, and when you analyze it with the reason of we living eternally, it makes kind of sense to be asked the question, right? But the answer is that if we keep postponing our effort, we keep making it more difficult for us, right? Because the law of progress will make us face different situations for us to be able to progress. And when we go back to the spiritual world And if we are a part of our reincarnation plan, we are discussing with our spiritual guides our incarnation plan, and we look back at this incarnation and we see that we didn't make any effort, the conversation will be, well, I wasted the whole incarnation because I didn't make any effort to improve because I knew I had eternity. So what would be the optimal solution for me for the next incarnation? It will be for me to come in a situation where this option of laziness, of avoidance, will be make much more difficult for me, right? Because of the awareness that I have already, that I wasted one incarnation. I need to improve. And in order to improve, I need to face different challenges that will force myself to at least try. I will come in more difficult situations. What are these more difficult situations? It could be financial, it could be family, it could be health, it could be several different things, whatever is more appropriate for us to make it less likely for us to fall in the same old habits that we would have the tendency to. And again, if we are not there participating, if our spirit, because we are not in a condition of participating in our reincarnation plan, the spirits, our guardian angel, our protecting spirits, will make that choice for us because they know what's our best opportunity to succeed. We will always be placed where we have the best opportunity to succeed in the new incarnation. If, again, we have our free will, we make our choices. If we fail in that incarnation because of our lack of willingness, lack of effort, it keeps becoming more and more challenging the next incarnation. This is not a punishment, because God never punishes, and there is no punishment in the natural law. Is the law of cause and consequence. Is an opportunity for us to learn through a different path and a more challenging path, because it will be better for us. Okay, so that's the idea here. And then Kardec comments in terms of our material positions here, right? That when we are not in a good position here on earth, we'll try to change as soon as possible. We'll make an effort to change our financial, social position as much as we can. So it's the same thing in terms of our eternal life. When we look back and we see ourselves looking back with wasted opportunities and with lack of effort, we are going to eventually we will want to try something harder, more difficult, for us to have to learn and to make an effort, and by that being able to evolve. Is it always going to work? No, we know it's we just have to look around and we see how many people have their incarnations, waste their incarnations for different reasons, right? But eventually, you know, as again, going back to the beginning, we are eternal spirits, and we will learn and we will evolve. One way or another, we will eventually fall in line and follow the law of progress as it's supposed to be on our evolutionary journey. Okay? Questions, comments? Oh.
196. Since spirits can only improve by experiencing the tribulations of physical existence, does physical life equate to a type of sieve or filter through which the beings of the spirit world must pass to reach perfection? Precisely. They improve themselves through these trials by avoiding wrongdoing and practicing the good. It is only through many successive incarnations or purifications, and after a longer or shorter lapse of time, that they succeed in reaching their goal in accordance with their efforts. Does the body influence the spirit to improve, or does the spirit influence the body? Your spirit is everything, and your body is nothing but a decaying envelope. That is all. There is a material comparison of the purification of the soul in the juice of the vine. It contains the liquid called the spirit, or alcohol, but is weakened by numerous foreign elements that change its nature. It requires several distillations to reach absolute purity, each of which remove a fraction of its impurities. The still is the body into which it must enter for purification, and the foreign elements are the perispirit, which gradually purifies itself as the spirit approaches perfection.
Okay, so here, Kardec asks the spirits if the physical life is, as the physical life is the key for our moral and intellectual involvement. If the physical body compares to a filter, right, or a sieve that we have to go through to reach perfection, and the spirit says it's exactly that, right? So we can learn the spiritual world, and we know that. We just have to read the works of André Luiz in the Life in the Spiritual World collection to see how much he has learned in the spiritual world from the time he was in the lower zones in Ossular to the time that he's already working by himself in the last book that he appears in that collection, which is Sex and Destiny. So we can, yes, learn a lot in the spiritual world, but for us to make sure that we have internalized the learning, we have to come to this physical world, and we have to go through a physical life to face the challenges that will show us to ourselves that we really learned the lesson and it became part of who we are, the qualities that we tried to acquire when we were there in the spiritual world. Again, we need endless incarnations. Well, it's not endless because at a certain point we reach the level of a pure spirit, and then it's over in terms of need of reincarnations, but it's a very large number of reincarnation. But there is no fixed number, as they say here, in accordance to their efforts reaching their goal, meaning it's all on us. We make our choices, we use our free will, and we evolve according to our own path. Then the second question, which is also interesting, right? If the body influences the spirit to improve, or the spirit influences the body. And the answer from the spirits is, you are, it's more or less like you are the spirit. Your body is just a cloth, right? The spirit makes the choices, the spirit thinks, the spirit has the will, has the learning, and has everything that the perispirit and the physical body execute, right? And then Kardec goes into the comparison of purifying the soul as like purifying the wine, right? That the wine goes through several process of filtering, several distillations to reach purity, removing fractions of impurity. And it's a very valid comparison with the perispirit, right? Because as we evolve, our perispirit becomes more and more ethereal, more and more, so to say, clean, which is not the right word, but it's what for the comparison here, right? The becoming less and less material in terms of the physical world. So as we go from incarnation to incarnation and we keep evolving, our perispirit becomes less and less material, and we are able to access higher and higher places in the spiritual world, connected to more elevated spirits, being able to benefit from the knowledge of these more elevated spirits. So it's an evolutionary process as we go on and go through the process of reincarnations in different worlds. We talked about this last week. We are on Earth and we have been here for a long time, many incarnations. We'll continue to be, because that's where our familiar friends and enemies are. We need we use better for ourselves the experience here on Earth, but that doesn't prevent us from being incarnated in other worlds if it's necessary, and coming back, or moving altogether to a different world as Earth moves into a world of trials, a world of regeneration from a world of trials and atonements. Many spirits will leave Earth and go to a less evolved planet. Okay?
Yes, so the question of the physical body is a little difficult here for me to grasp, because the quality of that physical body, the instrument that you're going to use into their incarnation, I think it plays a role in assisting in the advancement of the spirit. A body that is gripped, that cannot move, will have an effect on the spirit. We see in the movie Nosso, the woman was ready to be reincarnated. She was complaining that they were preparing a next body for her, very pretty, and she was afraid because beauty was a problem for her in the previous reincarnation. She's afraid she'll not be able to do that beauty again. So there is as I understand, an effect of the type of the body that you're going to use. Of course, the spirit is what makes the decisions. The spirit is what has the free will. But that physical body may play a major role in the decisions that the spirit may make.
Yes, but the physical body will be always in accordance to the necessities of the spirit for that incarnation, right?
Therefore, the physical body somehow influences the spirit, in my perception.
Yes, but it's the physical body that you need for that incarnation. It's not that because of the physical body, the spirit changes what it is, right? No.
I argue it might.
Yeah, but it will be as a necessity of the spirit, that physical body, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Not the other way around. That's the point here.
And again.
The other way around is you come here to, with the necessity of readjusting with something A, B, or C in your life, but your physical body prevents you to do that. That cannot happen.
No, I don't think that would happen.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
The body that gives you the opportunity to fulfill their objective.
Yes.
That to me is an indication that body influences the spirit.
No, the body influences the spirit is obvious, because otherwise we.
The answer is.
But it's in that sense that I understand, in the sense that what I mentioned, right? That your physical body, it's not going to cannot prevent you from doing what you are supposed to do as a start. Of course, things happen in your life that can make the physical body can prevent you from, if you abuse your physical body, you are supposed to go that way, this way you cannot go. But as a premise of the physical body, receiving a physical body that will prevent you to do what you are supposed to do, as a premise, as a basic premise, it's not going to happen. The physical body will be the best physical body available to you to fulfill what you are supposed to fulfill as a spirit. Now, your free will can change that and changes at all times. That's what I understand by the question. I understand your point, but I'm just talking about the formation of the physical body, and you know that, right? Physical body is built in a way that can be the best use
The best possible instrument
for the spirit.
for it to succeed
Yes.
in all objectives. Yes, I understand
And
that.
I think that's the point here in the question. But I agree with you that the physical body influences the spirit, of course. That's why we have to incarnate,
Right.
because we need to go through the experience of the physical body to evolve.
Yeah, in the case of beauty, that is of beauty, that physical body can hinder you to fulfill your objective of exercise humbleness despite the beauty of the physical body, right? So it could hinder your progress if you don't use your free will correctly. The physical body is not going to change.
Yeah.
But the influence of the beauty of the physical body may make the decision, may make the spirit misuse his or her free will.
But that's part of your trial or atonement, right?
So there is an influence of the spirit, the
Yes,
body of the spirit.
but there is always influence of the physical body in the spirit. Yeah, I agree with you, but I think the question here is the other way around. You're not going to come. You're not going to come with a body that's going to prevent you to do, in principle, what you are supposed to do. How you use your free will to do that, that's a different story.
That's more different for the spirits.
Okay.
John and Elmo, may I ask a question? This is Carol. At what point does a soul start efforting its way to create like a mono idea or an extreme focus on something? Is it when the soul is in physical, or would it be when it returns to the spirit world? When does this intensity take hold, most likely?
It's most likely and almost
Thank you.
always when you are in the spiritual world, because the physical body provides you with distractions, right? Because you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to do other things, right? You have to try to preserve your life, so you don't have full focus on one only idea. There are some people that become obsessed with one idea, but even those that become obsessed with one idea still in the physical life still have to go through the motions of the physical life. When you are in the spiritual world, you no longer have this, right? The spirit doesn't need to eat, the spirit doesn't need to sleep, the spirit doesn't need to fulfill the needs of the physical body. So it's much easier for the spirit to fall into a mono idea, meaning, let's say you were killed by someone, right? And you start building your anger more and more in the spiritual world, and you reach a point that you cannot think of anything else but revenge on the person that caused your death. So that's the mono idea, and that's when you lose your perispiritual form, can lose your perispiritual form, and can become an ovoid, as André Luiz describes in his books. So it's like Elmo says, we're never going to say it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult for someone that is incarnated to be to become victim of a mono idea, and because the physical body has its needs. Even people that completely lose their ability to rationalize and become, go to institutions, they still need to fulfill the basic necessities, right? They still need to eat, they still need to sleep, and these are all things that will distract from the opportunity to create a mono idea.
Oh, thank you. So then in the spiritual world, that's when the ovoids really could take hold. Here, not so much. I think I have a better understanding. Thank you. Interesting. Thank you.
And one thing, right? So we read this in the books of André Luiz, but I think it's important to bring it back. How these ovoids are used by the spiritual obsessors to influence incarnates, right? Because we just read in the book Liberation, right? That what was her name? I forgot her name. Had many ovoids connected to her. So the spirits will use these leaders of the lower zones and those that want to cause the obsession. So in this case that I gave, the spirit that became an ovoid because it can only think of anger and vengeance towards the spirit that killed him or her. This spirit has a mono idea, became an ovoid. If they want to force a spirit, an incarnated being, to use and act on their own anger, they can connect an ovoid to this incarnate person to enhance their anger, to enhance their desire to use their anger for their own, to harm themselves in a sense. So that's where sometimes ovoids are used to connect to incarnate individuals. Okay.
Oh, thank you, John. Thank you, Elmo.
But even in the spiritual world, ovoid is a very extreme situation, a very extreme case, right? It doesn't happen how that is. It takes a tremendous amount of time before it gets to be really a mono idea. We may see here incarnated individuals that will say, oh, the individual is obsessed with A or B or C, is obsessed with fishing, or obsessed with sex. All his life is about it. They don't think about anything else. We use those expressions, but in reality, as João said, this individual still takes time to eat, sleep, dress him or herself, other functions that our physical life demands from us. When you get to the level of mono idea, mono ovoid, all that is gone. You have only that thought in your mind and absolutely nothing else. So again, we're not going to say possible, but to have this mono idea as an incarnate is extremely, extremely unlikely, because their body in itself is abstracted from that mono idea.
And again, you cannot become an ovoid when you are incarnated, right? Because the physical body doesn't change the form to become an ovoid. The very spirit can lose its form and become an ovoid, right? Okay. All right. Fate of children after death.
Number 197. Are the spirits of children who die as infants as advanced as those of adults? Sometimes much more, for they may have previously lived longer and acquired more experience, especially if they have made progress. Can the spirit of a child be more advanced than that of his or her father? This happens very frequently. Do you not often see it in your world?
Okay, so to understand the death of children, according to Spiritism, is important to understand the process, our process as eternal spirits. And we need to go back to everything that we study, right? If we are eternal spirits, we are spirits, old spirits incarnated in a body of a young child. The spirit, because it has the body of a child, continues to be the age it is. With the evolution, moral and intellectual evolution, it has, with the body of a child, restraining its ability to express itself. So, as a child can be much more advanced than his or her father, as the Spirit says here. And actually, it makes sense, because if we are all progressing, it makes sense that the new generation will be more advanced than the previous generation in general. It's not going to be all the cases. There will be many different cases, but in general, we can see, if we look at the evolution of humankind, and again, we here have to be very careful. We're talking about the evolution of humankind in the large sense, not in the 10 years ago, 30 years ago. We're talking of ourselves compared to 100, 200, 300, 500 years ago. Is humankind making progress? Yes. Are we better than we were 200, 300 years ago? Sometimes a little, sometimes much better, but definitely better. Things that we would do 200, 300 years ago that would shock us, most people today, we don't do anymore. When we talk about wars, even wars have evolved. There is a much greater concern for most of the world to cause less damage to civilians in wars. It happens everywhere? It doesn't. Are we deviating from that? Yes, a lot. But again, before, there was no regard for civilians. You can see, if you watch movies of the Second World War, there was no regard for civilians, and you see on both sides, the winners and the losers. Nowadays, there is much more concern about civilians, and that happened in 78 years. In the 18th, 19th century, people were sentenced to death without much recourse, and very quickly, right? Burned at stake or hanged. Nowadays, there's still death penalty. There's still many places that people are condemned and put to death, but there is no comparison with 100, 200 years ago. So we are all progressing, and by the means of progress, new generations will be better than previous generations. And children, of course, will be, in many cases, more advanced than, more evolved than their parents. If it's not the case of the parents having to take care of the children, having to readjust and bring the spirit to help educate that spirit, which is many times is the case also. So we're talking here in general as a whole, okay?
So ideally, as Ron says, the law of progression suggests that our kids should be more evolved than us. And if you look at the long run, centuries, millennia, that is true. But if you look at incarnation by incarnation, that may not be the case. We have to be very careful that we may receive the spirits who are a lot of that involved. Our responsibility is to try to bring them, catch up to our level. And sometimes we may receive offsprings of ours who, few reincarnations ahead of us, and their job is to try to have a catalytic effect and bring us up to their level as much as possible, of course.
Okay.
Number 198. In the case of a child who has died very young without ever having the opportunity to do wrong, is his or her spirit a higher spirit? If the child has not had the opportunity to do wrong, it has not had the opportunity to do anything good either. And God does not exempt the child from the trials that he or she must undergo. If the child is pure, it is not because it is a child, because it is more advanced.
Okay, so the question here is, who has died very young? So we are talking about, children that are born, that are die right after being born or in the early years, that didn't have any opportunity to do anything right or wrong, right? This is a consequence of their own necessities of the children, or trial or atonement for the parents. But it doesn't mean that the child is a more or less evolved spirit, right? It just means the necessity for the child or the parents. Doesn't say anything about the spirit that was incarnated there. So many times we see, and we are going to see actually in the next question, the short life of a child may be a necessity to complement a life that they cut short by their own will in a previous incarnation, either through suicide, through euthanasia, or other means or abuse of their physical body. So that may be a reason for a child to have a very short life here on Earth, amongst many other reasons. Okay, that doesn't mean that the child is more or less advanced as a spirit. The fact that a child dies young has nothing to do with the evolvement of the spirit. Okay.
$199. Why is life often cut short in childhood? The short-lived life of a child may be a complement to a previous existence interrupted before its intended end. In addition, the child's death is often a trial or atonement for their parents. What happens to the spirit of a child who dies young? It restarts a new existence. If a human being has only one existence, and his or her future is determined for all eternity after this one existence, how could half the human race that dies in infancy merit eternal happiness without putting forth any effort? What exempts them from the often painful conditions of progress inflicted on others? This would not be consistent with God's justice. Reincarnation acts as the most supreme justice, equally distributed to all. The possibilities of the future are open to all without any exception or preference being given to any. Those who are the last to arrive have only themselves to blame. Each person must merit happiness by his or her own actions and bear the consequences of their wrongdoing. Viewing childhood as a normal state of innocence is completely irrational. Do we not see children who display wicked instincts at an age when even education could not have yet any influence on them? Many seem to be crafty, dishonest, devious, and even display the instincts of theft and murder from birth, despite the good examples surrounding them. Criminal law absolves them from their wrongs, asserting that they have acted without judgment, which is correct because their actions are instinctive rather than the product of deliberate intent. However, from where do these different instincts of children of the same age, raised under the same conditions and subjected to the same influences, originate? If not from the inferiority of the spirit, where does this mature perversity come from, since education has played no role? Those who are vicious have a spirit has made less progress, and each suffers the consequences, not of their actions as a child, but as the result of wrongful actions in prior lives. The law is the same for everyone, and no one can escape God's justice.
Thanks, Philip. So, one thing that we have to remember here is that when Kardec asked this question, the average life in Europe was around below 40 years, a little bit above 35 and below 40. But the average life was that low because you had a lot of children dying. At a certain point here, Kardec, on his comment, he asks, how can half the human race that dies in infants merit eternal happiness? Because really, couples would have many kids and a lot of them would die either at birth or sometimes with the mother or young for diseases. So the question, again, we still have children dying today, but the number of, in terms of percentage of the population, the number of children that die today is much, much smaller than the ones that died at the time that Kardec asked this question. Which doesn't change the answer at all, because it's still the same, right? We have to face the consequences of our previous incarnations. So the child's death can be a trial or atonement for their parents, or a complement to a previous existence interrupted before its intended end. Interrupted how? With the action of this spirit, right? Through abbreviating their life through suicide, through irresponsible actions. Sometimes, you know, abortions can cause these children to a woman to have miscarriages, or the child that the woman that had to practice abortions in the past. So all these consequences that influences in the life of a child. And again, we cannot say that it's always the child's responsibility, because sometimes the child will come for a very short incarnation to help as a trial or atonement for the child's parents, because by experiencing the loss of a child, which is considered the greatest loss that humans would experience, the loss of one's child, sometimes is a consequence of the parents' actions in previous existences, and consequences and responsibilities for them. Now, when a child dies young, it goes back to the spiritual world. It either stays in a colony for children where they continue to grow until they reach, they come to a new incarnation, or they regain their adulthood as a spirit, or if it's a more evolved spirit, can immediately go back to what he was before this incarnation. Okay, we just read in the book Between Heaven and Earth a visit to the colony of children where little Julio is being taken care of between two incarnations, and there are several other children there being taken care. These are all children that go back to the spiritual world and need to go through the normal growth phase. And again, it's the time in the spiritual world is not the same as here on earth. So A child that dies when it's 8 doesn't need to grow until they are 20 to become a adult spirit. It's not exactly like that, but we'll need to go through the growth phase back in the spiritual world to regain the adulthood, the spirit adulthood, so to say. Okay? And again, we come here and a child is just a spirit, an old spirit reincarnating. So everything that the actions of children, we look at children and we see them acting one way or another, is the responsibility of the parents to try to control their inferior tendencies, and the best window of opportunity for parents to educate their children is from 0 to 7 years old, when they are very malleable and still live half there and half here. Then it becomes a little more difficult from 7 to teenagers, and it becomes very hard when they become teenagers, because it takes fully form, and it becomes a challenge. But we have the responsibility of keep trying, right? Like our parents did with us, we have to do it also. Okay? Any final comment, questions? Okay, so next week we are going to talk about gender of spirits, another interesting subject. Okay. All right, so this Sunday, it's the last Sunday of July, so we have our Q&A session. You are invited to join us, bring your questions. The lecture we have on Saturday is by Dr. Rejane Planner from Vienna, and she's going to talk about, I actually forgot, I guess, the name, challenging science, or let me see if I can find here. To remember the title. I don't have it here, but it's Dr. Rejane Planner. You can find on our weekly email. She's a scientist. She used to work at the United Nations on the scientific area in nuclear fusion, if I'm not mistaken. So she's going to bring an idea of how science, how spiritism can use science and help with science. Okay, so this Saturday, 11 a.m. through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page. And I think that's all for us, right? Just a reminder, the book club comes back on August 14th, and the Spiritist group of Connecticut Thursday meeting at noon comes back next week, August 1st. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Philip, for reading, and thank you, everybody, for being here and participating. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together again as brothers and sisters for our study of the Spirit's book, Chapter 4 being the chapter of multiple lives. We are eternal spirits, and we are always evolving. The law of progress makes us face different challenges or difficult circumstances to work out those past tendencies through the opportunities which we can apply our efforts to. The Spirit is everything. We can learn in the spiritual world, but most likely we need to incarnate to acquire purification through our free will in a physical body and perispirit. A child can be more advanced than their parents. Therefore, this is why humankind is making or will be making progress in general. A death of a child may be a trial or atonement for their parents, and even a challenge for the child's spirit. A child may be taken to a spiritual colony or children's colony for their development, depending on their advancement. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us. for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, the healers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center SGNY and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and of charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.